Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the UConn Daily Podcast. This is Aman Kidwai, joined by John Silver. We're working hard to ramp this up to a daily podcast or something close to that, but life gets in the way, John. Well, that's okay. We're excited to talk after this past week for UConn men's hoops, a game against St. John's and Creighton. Another very interesting and unpredictable week for the UConn Huskies. We'll talk about that as well as the women's basketball team and what they've been up to lately. Let's start with the action from Tuesday night, John. The Huskies were in Omaha to play Creighton, a team they have not beaten on the road, a team they lost to earlier this year, coming off a disappointing loss to St. John's. The squad's banged up. Hassan Diarra, we found out, is dealing with a knee issue that is just going to linger through the rest of the season. He didn't play a minute in the second half of last night's game. Solo Ball's got a wrist injury. Alex Caraban had been dealing with injuries. Mahaney, Noel. Squad's a little banged up, but hey, they found a way to pull out a win despite giving very far from their best performance as a team, 70-66 at Creighton. First win ever at Creighton. Liam McNeeley, folks. We were talking while he was injured that it was made clear to us how important he was to this team. We saw him make an impact as he came off the bench in the St. John's game for his return from injury. Nobody could have predicted that this would happen. Even if you're predicting Liam McNeeley comes back and is UConn's leading scorer down the stretch, he dropped 38 last night, a Big East freshman scoring record for UConn. He was doing it with threes. He was doing it with tough buckets. He was finishing at the rim in unique ways. He hit some ice cold free throws at the end to ice it as well. He scored UConn's first and last points. John, what do you think about Liam McNeeley virtuoso performance to beat Creighton?
Yeah, no, that is a pro basketball player in a lottery pick. We saw, and it's funny, like you see this with a lot of freshmen. Like not everybody's Cooper Flag, who's clearly the best player, probably coming to college basketball in decades. I mean, LeBron never went there. I mean, at least in Zion, dominant wise, but I think the world of Flag and his teammate in high school. I mean, I guess you can call Mount Verde a high school. It's more like a basketball camp.
Yeah.
But you have Liam McNeeley. He is a pro. I mean, it's the shooting, it's the playmaking, able to, the athleticism. I mean, he's not a super athlete, but you can tell the body control and the skill level. Now we look at UConn; they're 17-7, they're fringe top 25. Well, if they had this player, I think they get 3-4 more wins that they've lost. I mean, he missed 8 games. They went 5-3. They probably get 2 of those games, or maybe all 3. Who knows? I mean, if they get McNeeley from last night, um, just a tremendous basketball player. And here's what I liked about it. He's a freshman. He's been out for 8 games. He's got to sit to watch. Now let's think about he comes back, has a good game against St. John's, but it wasn't enough. He took 22 shots yesterday. He decided that I'm the best player on the floor. I'm the best player on my team. And I am going to not let my team lose. And that gets me excited because when you get into the Big East tournament, when you get into these big games, hopefully in a long run in March is what we always want. I'm not going to say Final Four until I see this team reel off like 7-8 in a row. That it's not there. They're not there right now. They're a 6 seed. I'd put them at. So, but let's you look at that. There's nobody who was stopping them yesterday, and we'll get into it later, I'm sure. But I actually loved when they went small and they took Kyle Brenner out of the middle. That's when they came back. That might be something that Dan Hurley wants to judiciously use against rim protectors, especially if Samson Johnson and Terrace Reed are ineffective because of foul trouble. Because I don't want them out there if they're not aggressive. And if they're not aggressive offensively or defensively or on the boards because of foul trouble, then why play them anyways? So I like that small lineup. They put McNeeley at point guard. I thought it was fabulous.
Yeah, I mean, I think with McNeely, it was really clear that it's like you said, not just the scoring that he brings to the
Mm,
table. He's a really high IQ player, smart passer, and he's a dog, right? He also has
mm,
that, desire to chirp people. He has a desire to hit big shots and celebrate a little after it. And you need a little bit of that on this team. That's something that this team, identity wise, was a little bit lacking. You don't expect it to come from a freshman. You expect it to maybe come from some of the more tenured players on the team, but it is a young UConn team overall. They've lost a lot of experience, not just super talented guys and high character guys. They lost a lot of just experience over these last few years. It seems like the rest of the roster, with all due respect to everyone, except for maybe Solo Ball, is just meant to be more of a complementary player. And that includes Alex Caravan, who has had a tough time stepping into that true team leader role, right? Like the team built around you, the offense running through you, you taking every shot.
yeah.
He's not that guy. That's not kind of the vision for what's occurring here. And that's fine, right? He's a really smart player. Caravan himself found a way to make an impact in Tuesday night's game, even though for another night his three was off. He was 0 for 7 from three. He was still making plays. He was still getting good, hustle putbacks and that kind of thing. He hit a big bucket in the last minute with the game tied to make it 67-65. With 6 seconds left, he did miss the front end of a 1-and-1 with UConn up two, though, to help. That could have iced the game. So, he's working through some things. Again, might have lingering injury, might now have some sort of form of confidence, issues affecting him in certain moments on the court. There was a moment in that St. John's game. I think everyone noticed it. He passed up a three, passed the ball. UConn turned it over, and it was a three on the other end. And, that was kind of the demoralizing moment there. So I think, while Liam McNeely's 38 points is super exciting, it's also a really good piece of evidence for kind of the thesis that UConn should be seated higher than its resume. Just like you mentioned, 3 losses. Okay, 3 losses with McNeely out. One is to Villanova by 2 points on the road. Again, missed free throws. Uh, the other was 5 points to Creighton at home, 4 points to Creighton on the road. Right. So those are the losses without McNeely. Right. I think you have a really strong argument for how much better this team is with him. And if they can show that in this stretch over the course of the rest of the season, I think they have a chance to be seated higher than uh, higher than what their resume says, higher than a team with, higher than a team with 7 losses would. Now, again, I think there is reason for concern for basically the entire rest of the roster. Uh, you need Caravan to figure out this his threes, his potential, mental block that might be keeping him a little bit, or whatever it might be. Hassan Diarra might not be as available going forward down the road. That means you got to really ramp up Liam, Aiden Mahaney, and Ahmad Noel, who we did not see uh, in Tuesday night's game and have not seen since his injury. So uh, and then need more consistency from Jalen Stewart, Terrace Reed, Samson Johnson. You can't. It's not just the foul trouble with them. It's missing defensive rotations or assignments, and it's uh, you know bad fouls and when you those stone hands moments on offense too. So there's a little bit to be concerned about around the roster. There were a lot of concerns coming out of the St. John's game, and I think those will persist because you still need to be a complete team to to handle the Marquettes of the world, to win a Big East tournament, to make noise in the NCAA tournament. You still need to be more of a complete team. So, still looking for that from the Huskies.
Yeah, the DR injury is going to be problematic for them in the sense that it seems like when they say tendonitis in the knee, and it's not going to get better. The only thing that's going to get him better is a long rest. That's what happens to people. He did not look explosive. He has not looked explosive the last couple games. Like, I think of him as a jet. Somebody gets up the court and plays at a different speed than everyone else, and he hasn't shown that. And when he loses that speed, he's ineffective. He's just not a great shooter. He's not a great field guy. He's a jet. So Mahaney, disappointed in his play this year, quite frankly. I don't think it's been up to the expectations of what the team wanted. You can always redeem yourself. I was expecting a better shooter and maybe a little more confident ball handler. He looked shaky with the ball in his hands. That's the bad news. So I think they have problems at the point guard spot, and that's been my fear all year was that they weren't going to get enough of that at the end of the year. And I think injuries and maybe just not a comfort level in the Big East is hurting them there as far as Mahaney's case. What I did like is what Dan Hurley did was he's like, you know what, McNeely's our best player, and best all around player. Uh, he can pass the ball, he can dribble, and here's the thing: is when you put like a small forward play, let's do old school. A point forward is what we'd call it. What I'd say it's more positionless basketball, but that's like a new age thing. Essentially, what you do is you don't have to be a point guard. Like no, there's not a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's backcourt guys who handle the ball. There's wings, and there's a big guy. I believe McNeely, because of his size, he's not going to get ball pressure from who's defending him. And as you can see, if you don't put ball pressure on McNeely, he's gonna create plays and get to the basket. So I think having the offense run through him actually helps their offense get started because they're an execution team. And I felt and I know we're going long here, but I felt like with Hassan Diarra and Mahaney, is the book on them is to pressure them in the backcourt and to really push them out towards the half court. With McNeely, the small forward is not doing that. The wing who's guarding him is doesn't want to get blown by and have McNeely either shoot it or make an easy pass. So I think they should go with shooting at the 1-2 per se. Put the ball in McNeely's hands. Let's see what happens.
Yep, I like the McNeely point forward, or whatever you want to call it, situation. I think that was a good move uh, uh, for them offensively, and I think there were a lot of interesting, smart, good coaching decisions here. I actually even liked as an idea the starting lineup. To say, all right, let's throw some of our bigger guys in there, but it's just let's see Jalen Stewart and Caravan and McNeely out there together because we believe those are, our best five. Those guys are our best five, especially with some guys dinged up potentially. So I thought that was a creative potential solution. Maybe didn't work out as they wanted, but I like the potential there with that.
Yeah.
If the team's a little bit more with it, I think we also saw when both bigs got two fouls, Hurley did not put Yusuf Singare out there. He kept the lineup small. We saw actually Alex Caravan guarding Kalkbrenner for a little bit, which again, that's part of what I'm saying with Caravan, right? He's contributing everywhere he can. That is not what he's supposed to do, right? He's not supposed to be D'ing up Ryan Kalkbrenner, but he did because that's what the team needed in that moment. Uh, the small lineup eventually worked for UConn. It did not at first. It's kind of led to a run at first, but yeah, they figured some things out. So yeah, I agree that it was a really good coaching moment, game night for Dan Hurley. He also had a chance to remind the Creighton fans about his two rings and congratulate himself as he congratulated himself on the win. Some tough nights for him, leaving Omaha in the past. So uh, Dan Hurley probably feeling pretty good, especially after the way that the St. John's game went down. I think, 22 turnovers against St. John's after 25 turnovers against Marquette. You're going, we got a huge problem here. But they kept that in check, very much so. In the Creighton game, they actually Creighton had more turnovers, which was a welcome sight, 10, and UConn had just 6 on the night. So I think that's something really encouraging there. But again, there's a lot from all of this that needs to be worked on. Looking ahead, they've got Seton Hall on Saturday, so we should not expect too much from that. Uh, Seton Hall is looking like far and away the worst team in the league, currently
Okay.
riding a 9-game losing streak. It is sad. Yeah, you they have enough. And Shaheen Holloway is a really good coach. I honestly want him to leave at this point. I want him. I hope it's somewhere in the Big East because again, I think he's a good coach. I like him in the league. I think he's part of that, you know, coaches who love ball, right? That makes it all so great. But if I was his friend, I'd say, man, you got to leave Seton Hall. But they've got the home game against Villanova. They've got quick rematch with St. John's. They've got Georgetown coming into town at the end of the month. They'll have Providence on March 1st for a road game. So they're going to have a really really challenging close to this season. Uh, this is their chance to improve their trajectory, not just in terms of what people think about them or their ranking, which is not as important, but in terms of seeding, path, and just building confidence going into the postseason.
Yeah, it's watching them play is you can see moments and they have talent where you see something like McNeely go for 38. I mean, who's the only other freshman in the country who can do that? Right? There's only one. And when you see that kind of ability level, it gets you excited because McNeely is a lottery pick. Alex Garabin, despite his shooting struggles, which makes no sense to me, is an NBA a pro player. I don't think he's a starter, but Jalen Stewart's probably a pro. Solo Ball is probably a pro with his shooting. So they have four guys, including a lottery pick, who are going to end up in the NBA. Okay, so they have high level talent. It's not. It doesn't fit as well. It's not as there's no Cam Spencer or Tristan Newton here who kind of like who can dominate at the college level, but there's talent. And what I think is maybe what this showed the last two games is McNeely has to be that guy. He has to be the go-to guy. It's hard to say a freshman is the go-to guy, but I think he's the only one who has the game to do it. Alex Caravan is a complimentary player. That's okay. I mean, I don't think nobody's expecting Alex Caravan to be a first team All American, average 25 points a game. He even if he was shooting well, he'd never do that because he doesn't play basketball like that. So what I think is he's due a heater. So my hope would be that Caravan goes on. They always say you're going to eventually regress to the mean. He's going to aggress to the mean. There's no way he's this bad a shooter. There's no way that he's missing these many open shots, and these are halfway down. Some of these. He has some little problems with his shot that I don't like, which I think is what's causing the misses. So it's more mechanical. But once you fix that, I mean, he's due. I think he's going to be due big. I like that he kept on shooting. As somebody who at the old field house when I was at UConn, I missed a lot of shots and I never stopped shooting. If you ever played with me, I never passed the ball. So people like Alex Caravan, I have a warm place in my heart because shooters shoot, and the only way to break out of the shooting slump is to make your next shot. And the quicker you make that next shot, the quicker you're out of your slump. So he has to continue to take those shots he's taken. Now he has to slow down. He was starting to press, especially with that. He missed three in a row. The third one, his feet weren't set. He just rushed it. He was just kind of like searching. But I like Caravan to bounce back here. I think just playing their percentages. If I was a betting man, at least on players, I don't know. I'd say he's due for a pretty good run here because he's not that poor shooter. Like this is not something. This is not who he is. So I'm going to assume he's going to turn back to what he was.
Yeah, I mean, he was a bit of he had some streaks last year as well, like cold and hot. Um, when he was hot, he had, stretches of games where he was hitting like two-thirds of his threes. And
Yeah.
that's how he got his percentage back to a good point last season after a cold stretch. This is a really cold stretch.
Yeah.
And the misses, like you said, I agree. It's keep shooting. The worst thing is passing up the shots. Honestly, it's so interesting because normally when a player's not doing well, it's kind of like mental errors, right? It's like turnovers, bad passes, taking bad shots, like forcing
Yeah.
shots. And I really don't see any of that happening here with Caravan. That's not what's been happening at all. It's literally just missed threes, and in some cases, missed mid-range and other stuff happening, and then free throws, which really is something that should be an area of strength for him, and is something that late in games he's got to just find that confidence back. Uh, he's a very smart player. Everyone knows that. He's very hardworking. He's the guy who shows up first for warmups and all that stuff. Um, yeah, I mean it's either just an epic slump or an epic comeback
Mhm.
approaching, but we shall see. It's a very unique situation. Growing pains, trying to grow into this new larger role on the team. He was never taking 12, 14 shots a game last year. That was part of it. A lot of pressure off of him in the past. I still think he's capable of all those same things though. So, uh,
And you
and then
look,
like you
half his
said,
shots are from three, Amon, right? Sorry to
yeah,
jump on you, Amon, but
no, you're good.
like I'm looking at the box score right now, and half his shots are from three. So he's 5 for 7 from two, and he missed one layup that I don't know how he missed it. He doesn't. That's how you know he's going bad when he missed a layup that looks technically fine. It's just I think he's just rushing. I think it is in his head now. I think the shooting's in his head now, and just get in the gym, or maybe don't get in the gym. Just show up and shoot.
Yeah.
I'd like to see him maybe get a nice corner shot. That's the easiest 3 pointer in basketball. Maybe have some action where McNeeley goes to the basket, and then when they collapse on him, kick out to one of those old NBA corner threes that everybody
Mhm.
hates because everybody makes them. That's the shot he needs. That will get him off. Once he sees one go in, I think the confidence will return, and
Yeah.
we'll see. And know who doesn't hurt for confidence is Solo Ball, and his shot was way off last night. So,
Mhm.
but I don't worry about his confidence. He thinks he can make. He has that Rashad Anderson. He's a lefty Rashad Anderson, probably with more athletic ability. But you know, I mean, he take I could just see him. He would have took 30 shots if you let him. So it's a. I think they have a good idea of what they want to do. How many times are those guys going to go 0 for 11 from three and 9 for 29? They went 9 for
Right.
29 at Creighton. Samson Johnson and Terrace Reed combined for 2 points, 4 rebounds, and 8 fouls. Right, and they won against number 24 at Creighton. Let's do the, you know, uh, uh, full cup, empty cup, half empty, half full. I mean, you got the ability to pull out a game like that. They won at Marquette. Those are two great wins. I don't know what happened against St. John's. They're up big, and then they lost their physicality. St. John's was too physical for them, and that really bothered them, and they couldn't dribble the ball. They couldn't get the ball over. They
S-
couldn't,
St.
you
John's
know.
played a really good game.
Yeah, yeah,
You just
yeah.
can't.
Defensively, really good game defensively. They just kind of like it looked like men playing boys at the YMCA. They're just like, listen, we're not more talent. You're not more talented than us. You're more talented than us. We can't beat you skill wise. So we're just going to use our strength and toughness to beat
Mhm. Yeah, I mean the St. John's game was a really frustrating night.
you.
Really, really big night in stores. Honestly, the most packed I have seen. Gamble Pavilion, the concourse before the game. The area around stores to get in and park. Even getting out was the worst experience I have ever had coming out of a Gamble game. Um, no comment on what happened, but I stayed in stores for a little bit. Um, I think it's also funny, the idea like maybe Alex Caravan's preparing too much, right? Maybe he needs to go to the Lawrence Taylor School of Game Prep and try and just like party before a game and see what happens, see how his 3-point shot is or something like that.
That's
It's time to
basketball.
try anything for Alex Caravan, I think, at this point. But yeah, I mean, again, coming out of that game, St. John's, confusion, frustration, negative trending thoughts. Back on the positive side, you got this win. Really good job to get that win at Creighton. No, again, no questions asked about how it happened. You traveled to Creighton, came back with a win. Good job. They'll have this kind of like get right opportunity maybe for folks against Seton Hall. And then, they've got to win those games against Villanova and Georgetown. They're hosting Villanova. They will be at Georgetown, Madison Square Garden. Those are some games they need to win.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think so. The Big East you can't take off any day. But I think it was, Seton Hall's in a tough spot. They're just Red Auerbach could be their coach. I just don't think there's an answer on that roster. So I worry about them long term, but that's we can go about 6 hours on what's going to happen to some of those
Right.
smaller
Yeah.
smaller basketball schools out there,
Yeah.
such as Seton Hall, St. Bonaventure, and whatnot. What's going to happen to especially in the Northeast. But when I look at their schedule, you got to win games now. Now is not like we made a lot of excuses for the team. There's been no McNeeley. Garabam missed a free throw. When is he going to do that again? Oh, they lost 3 out there, and the Colorado loss is going to kill them. Colorado's absolutely god awful basketball team. Is turned into. I don't know how. I don't know how UConn was even Colorado was even in the game out in Maui. So we've had thrown out a lot of excuses. 7 losses. There's not that much more you can get before you are what your record is. So we're gonna see this team if they end the season strong, and make a run in the Big East tournament. Like my thing is I always want to see UConn at least in the semifinals because it's the most fun day of the year. I mean that game is selfishly.
Yeah.
Beyond that, you want to see that. So you want to get them out of the first round, but of course you'd like to see them at least in the finals. And then NCAA tournament, I still don't have a good grasp of where this team is. McNeeley gave me a little more hope because I'm a big believer in ability come March. The best players always play better. You know, uh, uh, you know, they're not a team that has gotten lucky this year. This is not a team that's probably won games where it shouldn't have. They probably lost games where they shouldn't have. I haven't checked the Ken Palms luck rating, but I you have to really it's interesting to watch. Like I don't know if I can feel confident about what they're going to do, but you know what? I'm interested. I
Yeah.
don't know. I want to see it. I think they're going to go out on their shield, as they
Yeah.
say,
Every
in the
game, you
NCAA
have no
tournament.
idea what's going to
You know,
You have no
you
idea what's
know,
going to happen in any
no
game.
idea. I don't think we're going to see like the year after Kemba Walker's team, where they had Andre Drummond and like 8 other NBA draft picks, and they lost to Iowa State, and they were just
Yeah.
Calhoun's last game, which is probably the most disappointing team in UConn history, in my opinion, was that team considering the talent level. Um, I don't think that team's going to go out like that. I got a feeling they might go out early, but I think if they go out early, they're going to go out kicking and screaming.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see, but yeah, I think they have potential to raise their trajectory, and at that point, we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Another team trajectory we are beginning to get concerned about is the UConn women's basketball squad. We've noted they don't always have the most opportunities for great wins and on the Big East schedule, and sometimes that's why they pepper these out of conference matchups with marquee opponents throughout the season. They don't have a non-conference slate followed by their conference schedule like most teams. Unfortunately for the Huskies, this past week they lost at Tennessee, giving the Volunteers their first win over the Huskies since 2007, which should sting for everyone. I had pretty much been making jokes like, hey, if you're old enough to remember, this was a big rivalry in women's basketball, like because Tennessee had fallen off. Tennessee had done what everyone wants UConn to do, which is fall off the map completely from the group of national contenders. UConn is not that, right? UConn is still a national contender nominally. They were the number 5 ranked team in the country going into this game against Tennessee on the road. It was, good contest, fairly close through the first half. Tennessee starts to pull away, and it's kind of not close by the end. Um, it's disappointing to see this. I think from UConn, you're so talented, you're stacked. You have some of the best basketball players alive right now on your roster can't lose at Tennessee. You can't lose this game. You're having trouble winning any of these, bigger non-conference games on your slate. That's going to be a problem for the Huskies going forward. What do you think, John? Oh, hey, sorry.
Am I on? I don't. I'm not sure if Husky fans want to hear this. Oh, but they have, to me personally, like, and I watch the games, and obviously, um, this is not going to make me a fan in my own household, and because my daughter's a huge fan, as is and then if I go visit my mother, so hopefully they're not listening. But they have an athleticism problem. They have a size problem. We saw it against USC. We saw it against South Carolina. We see it against when they play Tennessee. The players, UConn, I feel like they're playing with Big East size against SEC size. I hate to say it like that, but we see that a lot in football where okay, yeah, they're just too big, the football teams. This is what's happening to the women's team. They're playing these long, these big, these tall, these athletic players, and obviously skill-wise, none of them are better than Paige Beckers. But when you have Beckers, I've mentioned this before, Ashlyn Sade, Chen, uh, you they're just too small. They can't stop the other teams offensively because of their size. They don't have positional size, and then that equates to Elafi and Sarah Strong inside, but they have nowhere to go after those two. So they don't take enough threes for my liking because of that, but they don't have to in the Big East. The Big East Women's Basketball League they should be embarrassed about the quality that they're putting out there. I think I went to a game. Who was it? Was it Cincinnati? I don't remember who it was. I can't even remember. But it was like 24-2, and the game was over in 4 minutes. That doesn't do anything for UConn. And while it's not up for other teams to be competitive with UConn, I'm actually disappointed that the Big East teams aren't investing in their basketball to at least be competitive. Like they're just what they're doing is they're using UConn to help their gate, and they're not reinvesting it. So that's hurting UConn in the long run because I don't think some of these players, especially in the post Caitlin Clark era, you don't have to go to UConn or to South Carolina to be a superstar anymore. And that's good for the women's basketball game. You don't have to go to the old Tennessee where Tennessee would get 3 All-Americans and UConn you'd get 4. UConn still gets the All-Americans, but I think, what we're seeing with UConn and All-Americans is kind of like the Duke men's basketball effect on this. Is like, are you a McDonald's American? That's why Duke wants you, or because Duke wants you, that's why you're an All-American? I wonder. I mean, what's going on here? Because there's a lot of high-ranked players that are at UConn to sit on the bench, and then when they leave, maybe UConn's loaded. They're not performing when they leave either. So it makes you wonder. You know, uh, uh, if you got to get a little less skill and a little more size and strength, especially on the perimeter. But it's hard. It's really hard because Gino Auriemma like he plays his style of basketball is beautiful. Think of like it's like a Brazilian soccer team what they do out there. It's Dan Hurley went the opposite way. He took less athleticism to get more skill to play the way he wanted to. But now I just feel like women's basketball has become a much more physical game, especially on the perimeter. That they need to maybe augment. I mean, they need more athleticism out there. I mean, there's only so much you can do if you can't get by your opponent. And I don't know. I don't like what I'm seeing from them. But of course, we know what will happen. Is Paige is still to me the best player in the country. I know Juju Watkins is there, a couple other ones, but I just feel like she has another gear, and she's just they need her off ball to show it, and I just don't know if they're able to do that.
I think I was going to make the same point about Big East women's basketball. What an embarrassment. Yeah. And, you know, UConn moving from the AAC to the Big East, everyone felt really good about that. Felt like mostly it was an upgrade, maybe for baseball. For baseball, it was not.
No,
But, for everyone, it was an upgrade. You do less travel, all that stuff. For women's basketball,
not great.
you got to say the upgrade was
Okay.
minimal or
No.
none at best, possibly a downgrade even.
Uh,
And yeah, what the heck are you doing? You've got UConn in your conference. Recruit on that, right? Hey, you play UConn twice a year. Hey, you get UConn in the conference tournament. If you can just be the second best team in the Big East, you'll play UConn 3 times a year. That's what South Florida did in the AAC. So, and it's a huge opportunity for your coaches and your players to do that. Think about the exposure if you have someone who's a fringe pro prospect and you get them in a game against UConn, they'll have scouts watching their game. If they can show out in those games, they'll do well. You're absolutely right. They are financially benefiting from UConn women's basketball being in their conference, not just from the gate, but from their TV deal, right? And yeah, they play a lot of their UConn games in their men's arena. So yes, they do get a much larger gate from it as well. And then none of them are improving. None of them have improved measurably or notably since UConn joined 5 years ago. You never saw anyone be like, wow, that's like a slightly better recruit for Marquette, or like, oh, Georgetown looks like a much better team than it, has ever been, or anything like that. How is Georgetown women's basketball in DC not a better, operation? It's just something that's so miserable and embarrassing. We used to joke on the UConn blog crew, UConn women's basketball needs to go independent, maybe, and just run a barnstorming schedule. All of the games are, make an individual TV contract for your games and get a regular schedule that you need, because you're the only national program, and there's not a conference that makes sense for UConn women's basketball, right? You got to Texas this, you got to Notre Dame football this, because I do think this is hurting UConn. I do think these 90-40 blowouts that they play in between their competitive matchups is absolutely hurting them. It has to be.
yeah.
They've lost to Notre Dame, USC, and Tennessee. Those games were not, never, besides USC, you did not think for very long in the second half that UConn was going to win those games. The Big East is hurting UConn women's basketball.
No, it's absolutely right. When you look at their team this year, and we'll take away the Bahamas tournament, which is, whatever happens there, happens there. What happens in the Bahamas stays in the Bahamas, right? But what happens with the team is the games you're going to look at to gauge what they are, because the Big East is bad, and it's bad. Creighton's okay. UConn played them. They played UConn tough a couple weeks ago, but they lost to Notre Dame. They lost to USC. They lost to Tennessee. They got a game against South Carolina coming up. That's going to be tough. With all four of those teams, three of those teams with three of those losses, has showcased the deficiencies of size and strength and toughness. And I don't say, when I say toughness, I don't mean that they're not mentally tough, because I think the UConn women's players are. I just think that they're just small. To me, they're too small. I like size at every position and skill. Preferably with 3-point shooting, but I just feel like they're just they're playing some of these teams are playing a different game now, that it's really tough for UConn to play that beautiful style of basketball, because they're getting physically outmatched, and they're really hammering Beckers in these games. They're like, cut the head off the snake, the body will die, as they say. And is she good enough to overcome that? Yes, but that's asking a lot, because these teams are real athletic and they're really, really physical.
Yeah, the Page thing, I'm surprised. Gino has commented on it, and I agree. She doesn't really get the superstar whistle, which is
No.
kind of surprising. But
Mm.
yeah, this South Carolina game is going to be a big one. Really, their last opportunity. UConn notched some good wins early in the season against UNC, Ole Miss, and Louisville, but since has not beaten a ranked team, they'll still probably be a fairly high seed in the NCAA tournament. I think they still have a shot to do everything. When you have Paige Beckers and AZ Fudd, and you're
You
a
can
really
shoot.
good team.
You can shoot. You got the best
Um,
player.
but yeah, we've got again, just Big East warm up matchups until February 16th, a Sunday, when they travel to South Carolina for that matchup with the Gamecocks, currently ranked fourth in the country. We will
Yeah.
see how that goes.
Great game. Great game.
That's going to do it for John and I on this episode of the UConn Daily Podcast. Please tell your friends. We've been excited by the response that we get. We're working our hardest to do this more often, and we'll get one out on Monday, right, John?
Yeah, we're going to do it. We're putting ourselves out there. We're committed. We're all in. 10 toes in. Was that the old term? I took the stairs downstairs to the podcasting studios, so we're all ready to go.
Sounds good. All right. See you next week, everyone.
All right.